Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a bit of a factory tour. But we aren't looking at cars or electronics here. We're looking at code. We're going to demystify CI/CD pipelines, the digital assembly lines that are absolutely reshaping how modern software gets delivered. Because think about it, code is really just raw material, right? In today's incredibly fast-paced environment, you just can't handcraft deployments and cross your fingers, hoping they don't break production on a Friday afternoon. The real challenge isn't just writing the code anymore. It's figuring out how to turn that raw code into a reliable, working product in the hands of your users, all without descending into the dreaded integration hell. So here's our structural blueprint for today. First, we'll look at the software assembly line, then we'll talk about choosing your automation tool, and finally, we'll wrap up with pipeline best practices. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the software assembly line, getting from raw code to a ready product. Now, I know you already know that a CI/CD pipeline is basically the backbone of deployment, but treating it truly like a high-speed manufacturing assembly line, that is exactly what separates the sluggish teams from the elite ones. Raw code goes in one end, and the pipeline does all the heavy lifting. This means developers can actually focus on building things rather than, just babysitting deployments all day. Just like any real-world assembly line, the work here is broken down into distinct stages. Build compiles your raw material. Then test steps in as your ruthless QA, which, let's be honest, is usually where pipelines bottleneck if your tests are a bit flaky. And finally, deploy pushes that finished product live. When you get this tuned correctly, it's just this beautifully seamless, predictable journey straight from commit to customer. All right, let's shift gears a bit. Section 2, choosing your automation tool. It's time to meet the machinery. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is seeing the industry's major players side by side. GitHub Actions acts kind of like the robot. It's heavily integrated and great for straightforward cloud deployments like AWS. Then you have GitLab CI, which is our Kubernetes native option, built specifically for those containerized environments. And of course, there's Jenkins, the classic Swiss Army knife, famous for handling complex, custom enterprise deployments, often on platforms like Azure. The contrast between these approaches is actually fascinating. GitHub Actions, our robot, is so heavily optimized for the developer experience. It literally lets you trigger workflows right next to your codebase. On the flip side, Jenkins, that Swiss Army knife, well, it might lack that sleek modern sheen, but its massive plugin ecosystem means it can wrangle pretty much the most complex legacy edge cases you could possibly throw at it. It's a total powerhouse. And then, of course, there's GitLab CI. Look, if your finished product is destined for a Kubernetes cluster, deployment can get really complicated really fast. But GitLab CI absolutely shines here. It has container orchestration support built right out of the box. That makes that final leg of the assembly line remarkably smooth, saving you from a whole lot of configuration headaches down the road. Let's move to and see how this builds into our final section. Section 3, pipeline best practices. It's all about quality control. So, to keep your new factory running at absolute peak performance, discipline is key. First, you have to automate ruthlessly. Manual intervention is exactly where bugs love to breed. Second, use containers to ensure environment consistency. And third, actively monitor your pipeline, because a broken pipeline silently halts the entire engineering team, and nobody wants that. Let's double-click on that second point for a second. Containers, specifically Docker. Now, I know you already know what Docker is, but its absolute magic in a pipeline is how it completely eliminates that classic, well, it works on my machine paradox. By tightly packaging your code and dependencies together, you are guaranteeing that the exact same artifact you tested in QA is what actually gets deployed to production. We're talking zero environment drift. It's a real game changer. So the crucial point is, why go through all this effort to set up the perfect factory? Well, the ultimate payoff is drastically reducing the time and manual effort required to deliver your software. You are completely removing human friction from the release process. Basically, you're turning deployment from a highly stressful event into a completely boring routine. And boring is good. And that is the true power of CI/CD. It's really not just about shipping code faster. It's about reclaiming your engineering resources. So I'll leave you with this. If your pipeline becomes a fully automated factory, what will your team build with all the time you save?